And I'll turn it over to the manager to tell us what's on our work session today.
Yeah, actually, morning everyone, morning Mayor, council members. Hope everyone had a great weekend. We were speaking, Steve and I, last week, and he mentioned he had a presentation that summarizes the capital aspects of engineering projects. And I thought that would be a great topic to bring in front of you as we are starting our budget planning sessions early for the next cycle. And so I thought if we could try to capture the engineering projects with the capital, that would be the best topic to start with as we have conversations through the summer. So with that, it's really the only topic of the morning, so I'll turn it over to Steve, and thank you.
Des Moines City Engineer and Des Moines resident. Very excited to give this presentation. I started here in the summer of 2015, and I think you all remember, a lot of you remember, when I, kind of that first year, the big wave, we had residents coming in and saying, what are you going to do about our streets? What are you going to do about our streets? And then I would say that the following year, we had a lot of folks coming and saying, what are you going to do about our sidewalks and bicycle facilities? And then, as you know, we all had in 2018, the following year after that, we had the horrendous flood efforts. And so I'm excited to share this presentation because I think it shows a lot, to say the least, of what you all and our city has done in response to those efforts. And so I'm very excited to share some of this information, in the response to some of those efforts. And that's not to say, again, we all know there's a lot to do. But I hope we reflect here and take some time and see some of the incredible accomplishments here. So very excited to share this one. I am going to give a quick overview, real quick, of what our department does. Talk about that process. I know we have some of the media and we have some residents here and residents watching online of how does a capital improvement project get started and what does it take to deliver and implement a project. And then I'm going to give those highlights of that overview of some of the things we talked about, from stormwater to bridges, sidewalks, and our streets. So covering a lot today. So you're going to hear a lot from me, and feel free to chime in if you have any questions from there. But so starting off real quick, just an overview of our engineering department. Our focus as a department is to design and construct public infrastructure, as well as maintain traffic control systems essential to the safety, health, mobility, and quality of life of our citizens, businesses, and guests. So that's our engineering department mission there. We've got 101 staff, and they're divided up into 3 divisions: traffic and transportation, design and construction, and contracts and real estate. Our traffic and transportation division, which is about 40% of the group, a small portion of those folks, they focus on kind of the planning, programming, and the engineering side of things, from doing engineering studies, traffic signal timing and operations, and also managing things like our traffic calming program. You see, obviously, notably, MOVE DSM, our transportation master plan, as well as Vision Zero, our safety action plan there. So we've also got a team that are involved with our permit development center and doing site plan reviews, from reviewing things from a traffic standpoint. We're involved on the back end of, we don't manage the street use events, but we do have traffic folks involved in when street use events involve street closures and helping them work on detours. We respond to, it looks like, about 200 vision obstruction complaints on a year, and I know you all receive some of those when folks pull up at an intersection, they have trouble seeing. We have folks that go out and take a look at that and work with the property owners to mitigate. And then we also have, if you look on our main city website, we have a thing called Find Closures, where folks can see where street closures are. We have team members managing that as well. We also have a large team of folks that are out maintaining the infrastructure itself, from 441 traffic and pedestrian signals, to 120 active informational signs. We've got 200 miles of fiber, 60,000 signs, 2 million feet of pavement markings, and 4,600 crosswalks and symbols that we all paint every year. So team members out doing that within our department. Also, we have the parking systems. That includes 3,400 on-street metered parking spaces, as well as the 7 parking garages. Plus, we are leasing a parking garage floor at East 4th in Des Moines, and then also managing the city skywalk pieces. The skywalk corridor. The pieces that go through the private buildings are privately maintained, but we as a city have the stuff over the public right away, so like the bridges, and then we also have some skywalks that go through our parking garages that we're responsible for as well. And our design and construction division, they kind of work like a consultant to the rest of the city, and so for example, if our parks department wants to build a spray ground, our parks department will plan it out and give the vision for it. And then our team will actually do the detailed design, prepare the construction design documents, bidding documents, and then design it, bid it, and build it, oversee the construction as well. And so that's kind of one example. If our public works department has a flooding issue they want to address, or maybe they want to provide sewer service to a certain part of the city that isn't there, they would say, well, we want to provide sewer service here to this area, and then we would go through and design and size the sewer accordingly to that area, and oversee the construction as well. So.
Do you charge each department when you do those type of services, like for parks and public works? Do you charge back to the other departments?
That's a great question. So that Councilman Gatto is right. Actually, it's really this whole staff right here charges to the capital improvement program. So in other words, when we have a page, say for McKinley Avenue reconstruction, our team members are part of that budget. In charging to the CIP. So, yeah. So,
okay.
Mm-hmm. So if there's a spray ground page in our CIP, they're charging to that as well. So
To the project.
yeah. Yep. Right. So. Yep.
And obviously you below probably market rate of what you guys are charging each your interior, your departments are. Right. Yeah.
So in terms of a comparison, I used to be a shareholder in a medium-sized engineering firm in Chicagoland. Our from a private consultant standpoint, our overhead was about 15%. Or I'm sorry, let me correct that. Our profit was 15% in general, and then also within our billing rates was the electricity overhead and stuff that you pay for a consultant. So yes, doing stuff in house is substantially cheaper. Then
you're not making profit off other departments in the city.
Nope, I apologize. No, I'm comparing it to if you were to consult it out to a private consultant rather than us having staff and do it. Right, that's correct. So what's charged to the CIP is just the standard staff costs. But if we were to consult it out to a private consultant, then that consultant would have their overhead plus the profits. That's the
I take it you looked at that.
Oh yeah, yep. So, yep.
And if I could, that is the norm in all communities that we've dealt with, and it is just the cost of the staff that's charged to the project.
Yep. Our contracts and real estate division, we actually handle all the bidding. We assemble all the contract documents from putting up the proposals. We have an online bid center, if you will, on a web page where folks can just go, and you can see it's kind of in the lower corner there where you can look at projects, and it gets sent out to all these plan rooms and different entities to advertise projects, and people can subscribe to it, and they get notices, and so then we handle the bidding through that web page. We also have a real estate division that handles, if we need easements or permanent acquisition, or even they handle dispositions. We have some, you all see on your agendas, a lot of times we have alleyways that, they're platted on paper, but there's not really an alley there. So residents want to buy it, and so we handle that process as well. Okay, so just a little bit over our process. I do want to point out to our residents, if you go right on the main page, in addition to finding closures, you can also click on the projects map, And so that is our city capital improvement projects. So right on the main page. It also is on the engineering page, but obviously it's easier to find on the front page. That'll take you to a map that kind of looks like this, and so you can type in your address in the upper left-hand corner, and then it takes you to this something like this, and you can click on these little icons, and it pulls up what the project is. It tells you a little bit about it, as well as, and I know this is tough to read with the white, but it also tells you most of all who to contact directly, and even the reference to the capital improvement page from our CIP, so folks can see how they want to see how it's funded. So this is an older graphic, but I've always liked it for how does a project get completed, right? We hear from our residents. We have our budget process, and that goes from the fall into the early year and the winter. Our council receives feedback from our residents. We've got our plan DSM, our comprehensive plan, which is our vision, guide DSM, which is our strategic plan. Those are kind of the vision and strategic plan that we use, and what I call implementation plans, such as MOVE DSM, our transportation master plan, our parks master plan. We have neighborhood plans. We've got, for example, plans such as, and I'll show you one example, our plan to maintain the parking garage structures. So those are what I call implementation plans. And then those are used, and I would use a term called programmers. Our programmers are responsible for bringing forth projects from all that feedback from those plans and presenting them during the budget process that starts in the fall. And then that all funnels into our city manager and finance office, look at all the finances and figure out, well, what can we do? And then, as you know, the city manager presents the budget in the early part of the year, and then ultimately is improved. Typically in March. This year it was in April, because we had a change in from our legislature and when that was approved. But so that's kind of just in general, how a project's brought forth, and you can see all the different departments that are considered programmers, right? That bring forth projects. And so, kind of just an example, I mentioned this kind of before, right? So we have our strategic plan that we want upgraded infrastructure, we want to maintain our infrastructure. We have we had done kind of an overarching implementation plan for how do we maintain our parking garages structurally, and then we use that plan to put money in the CIP in the parking facility rehabilitation repair program, and that's how we come up with our budget and what we're doing. And then, of course, then you'll see projects that come out of that sheet. So this is kind of just an example overview of how projects are created. Then once we get a project, once there is a project in the capital improvement program, there's quite a process from there, right? So our city council adopts the capital improvement program every year, approves it. Then once we get a project, we finalize the scope and start the engineering process, assemble a project team. If there are private consultants that are needed from special, say if there's specialty work or or if it's maybe due to a workload effort, then we might bring a private consultant on. Then we have some preliminary engineering, environmental work, survey work, and then there could be real estate actions that are needed as well. And then ultimately, we follow state code and how we bid projects. We're required to order construction. Our city council is required to order construction. We have our bidding process, and then we have a hearing to award the construction contract. So you can see the different touch points where you all see things throughout a project, and then ultimately we build it, and then we have to accept it as well. So our bidding process is it's not, I wouldn't say it's short. This is just in general. This is a schedule I put out to our team to kind of like where our milestones we have to hit certain bid dates. But essentially there's 2 months of bidding, and then if there's real estate involved, it typically takes about 6 months to go through real estate. So that's just 8 months. 8 months, I would say, from final design, really, right? If you have a final design and we have plats and we know we need right-of-way or we know we need some easements, it's going to take us at least 8 months from that process as well. And this is not this table I just pulled it as an example, and I expect no one to read it. But what I wanted to show you is it's actually a schedule for the Grays Lake stormwater wetland basin. And some folks might say, well, you're digging out a hole and then you're seeding it with wetlands, but for that wetland alone, we had real estate involved because we had some property transfers there. We went through Urban Design Review Board. We went through the Parks and Recreation Board. We went through Access Advisory Board because we've got a trail around there. And so there's just a number of submittals and processes throughout what some might think might be a simple project. And so that's 33 weeks of going through that as well. And so,
Go ahead.
but in general, the general rule of thumb, and I've worked through communities across the Midwest and Illinois and Wisconsin, 3 years is generally what it takes to design, bid and build and permit a project, coordinate utility work. So once a project's funded, generally 3 years is kind of that normal rule of thumb. Can we do it faster? Absolutely. Can projects take longer? If they're more complex, certainly, absolutely they can. But that's kind of the general rule of thumb. Yep.
I mean, you don't think this is maybe a little excessive for projects of all these steps in here? That maybe we can simplify it a little bit, or cut some of these steps out and cut some of the red tape out so we can actually internally maybe do things maybe just a little bit quicker?
Well, some of it's kind of there, and I guess I apologize. I don't know if there's from a code standpoint, we are from our own city policies, and I'm not sure if it's code, but there are times we have to go to Urban Design Review Board if there's certain funding used. We go to Parks and Recreation Board if it's actually a park facility, and Grays Lake Wetland has been turned over to our parks maintain the trail and facility around it, and then Access Advisory Board is because we're put in the public trail facilities. So I mean, we'd like to try and go as quick as possible. I think some of those checks are in there. Just it just kind of depends on the funding and what type of facility it actually is. Yeah.
I mean, I have a follow-up question because it looks like those were kind of stacked one after another, but there's no reason they couldn't all be kind of in parallel, right?
Oh yeah.
They could all, if you needed to, be all in the month of January.
Right, you can
Yep.
have 3 months out of just our boards. Our
Yep.
boards are taking 3 months.
And it's
Right.
and it's really the design that's going along
Correct.
in parallel
Correct.
that is driving
Yep.
this. And that it's not like you can change the design.
That's correct. Yep.
The amount of time someone's
Yep.
spending.
Some of it's just when those meetings are when those boards are following. But the Councilman's right. It is really a lot of those timeframes are the design components, and then you see we did need some property transfers. In this case, it was Hubble and some railroads down there to deal with the right-of-way acquisition plats. So.
But between all the boards, you're talking, they basically could do it at the same time, right? Doesn't
Correct.
change.
Yeah.
So you've got 3 months from February through May that we're waiting to get to a board.
Yeah, I'm looking at this.
That's what I'm
We're
more.
going through this internally. I mean, what the general public is going to have to go through, they're going through all of these steps. Might seem just slightly excessive, but that's
that's our
my
internal.
opinion, and that's, I mean, internally you're going through this. I mean, outside we're obviously going through the same thing, which seems a little much for some simpler projects.
And the councilman's correct. I mean, for example, the Kristen Marcy Coleman Bridge, right? That was built. Probably, they went to the Parks and Recreation Board, Access Advisory Board.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm familiar with it.
I mean, what are there private developers that have to go through Park and Rec or Access Advisory?
If it's going to be public type, infrastructure.
Only if it's public.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't think of, it's just Urban Design Review Board,
Yeah.
and that's associated with receipt of TIF.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
This graphic is taken from Move DSM, our Transportation Master Plan. From our public process, it's always beneficial to get out to the public early on in the concept stage. That's before you get into the detailed design and where we actually spend a lot of time detailing elevations and storm sewer sizing and all those kind of construction documents. We meet with the public early, and we also You see up there council check-ins. We check in with the ward and at-large council members before we go to the public, and so this is our public process, say for a typical transportation project. So. So some of the capital improvement program highlights. This graphic, a lot of us remember, right? In June 30th of 2018, the power of water is incredible, right? Those cars obviously did not park that way. That couch cushion, the water actually picked up the asphalt overlay, so it kind of created like a wave effect, and that couch cushion was out of someone's house and ended up under there. And so a devastating event, to say the least. In response, our council injected, I think it was 25 million in the range of stormwater money in there to attack this, and we set a goal to basically go from the downhill portion of Macocata Drive up to 47th and Holcomb in 5 years. And so, in 2018, we had a lot of public meetings. I remember a lot of you in the front yards of meeting with folks, and that was our goal, was we're going to attack this in 5 years and get up from Macocata Drive to 47th and Holcomb. And we say, why did we choose that, right? Well, that's kind of the main artery of this area, right? And so I put these arrows, that is generally where the water is going to the Des Moines River. So our goal was to try and attack that main artery. And the old plan that was in place for a while was really more focused on conveyance. So when I say conveyance, just conveying a large portion of stormwater. When we, in 2018, when the flood events happened, our public works team and engineering team got in rooms and we figured out, well, how do we inject detention, right? When we say, what is detention? Well, conveyance is, like I said, the conveying the water. So if I dump a small amount of water through a straw, the straw hopefully will convey the water. If I take a whole bunch of water, a big pitcher of water, dump it through a straw, the straw won't be able to handle it, and then it floods all over the place, right? Well, detention is if I attach the straw to a large bowl and then I dump the pitcher into the bowl will fill up and allow the straw to drain out the water. So that's kind of a way I've tried to explain what is stormwater detention. So we implemented some detention facilities in here. One of them uniquely is underneath 47th and Holcomb. These are 12-foot wide by 4-foot chambers that are underneath the street that actually store water. So this was kind of in a hole area, if you will. And so now instead of the water being stored, unfortunately, in people's basements and on the street, it's now stored as a detention underneath the road. We also created a detention basin. This is kind of near Whitmer Park. There was a ravine type area there was actually a kind of a wood culvert box that ran through the ravine. So all we did was open it up at each end to use the ravine as stormwater detention. And then you can see the ends of the ravine, the one end of the ravine is Beaver Avenue. Those are 7-foot diameter culverts. You can kind of see the person that's standing there from a size perspective. So again, conveyance and detention there. And then we talk about detention. This is we actually just got an email from a resident that was really happy about how our public works department is doing more native planting instead of mowing. It used to be was just turf grass for detention basins, and they would spend money mowing them. So instead, we've switched to more native plantings. And so I got an email from a resident that was so happy to see all the plantings that have bloomed in this stormwater detention basin at 41st and College. Hamilton Drain, again, this is kind of the similar concept. We've got, there was actually an old, this is about an old wood box called the Rocky Place Sewer. It's, in some cases it's about 5 feet by 4 feet wide, and that was what was conveyed. The old wood box was the red line that kind of runs across the screen there. And that was what's conveying the stormwater. And in some cases it was in okay condition, other cases it was not. I know Councilmember Westergaard had met with some residents that saw some locations that weren't. And so, of course, when that wood box gets overwhelmed, remember the straw concept, that's where the water's going to go. And this had flooding history enough that FEMA mapped a 22-acre of this 22-acre portion of land as a special flood hazard area, which required these people mandated that if they had a federally backed mortgage, which is most mortgages are, that they have to get flood insurance, and so which is not cheap. And so this is kind of that. This is actually the map of the area. The yellow and the green is the special flood hazard area. So again, our public works team and engineering team got together, and the old plan was, again, just conveyance. The old plan wasn't quite reasonable. There were some sections where they had like 3 12-foot wide culverts going down a street to convey the stormwater. Well, the street's only 25 feet wide, so that's not really a lot of room for that. And so again, we switched gears and kind of added more stormwater detention. And so you can see kind of some of the boxes that are in that area where we've injected stormwater detention to store water, slowing the rates downtown or slowing the rates downstream into the program. So right here you can see this is kind of our plan. The blue is pretty much complete. The green is 100% complete. The blue is substantially completed. And then so right now we're in phase 3, which is the orange, and that's probably about 60% complete right now with those sewers. And then all we've got left is just the pink from that, what's called the Hamilton Drain storm sewer improvements. There used to be a county drainage district called Hamilton Drain. It no longer exists, but we've just kept the name, I guess, for the drainage purposes. And again, had to get creative. There's not a lot of green space in our more established neighborhoods, and so here there's actually 2 big parking lots that a church had that we worked with them and said, well, hey, you get brand new parking lots if you let us store 1 million gallons of stormwater underneath them. There obviously is easements there that they won't build to build buildings there, but that churches generally will stay in that land use, and so those parking lots, they got new parking lots. With it, we also were able to clean up sidewalks. There actually wasn't a lot of sidewalks in this area. There's a lot of sidewalk gaps, and so we're able to kind of clean up this whole area, with this project, as well as put in huge amount of storage facilities. We've also been working on flood mitigation kind of along our rivers as well. This is our plan for the flood mitigation program, levee alterations program. We've been funding a lot of that with state tax money from the flood mitigation program through the state. The green and A was complete, and I'll show some graphics of that in a little bit. That's basically from the confluence on Des Moines River up here, upstream to just north about where we are. Then we've also got phase B in blue, which is about 90% complete. That goes from the confluence upstream of Raccoon. And we're currently under construction, about 50% complete, maybe a little more than 50% complete, with phase C, which is a large phase from the confluence down to southeast 14th Street. And so I'll show some graphics, kind of what some of these improvements are here. Along with some of the phases, which you didn't see on there, we also did some interior drainage work. We've replaced a number of pump stations, upgraded the pump stations. When we talk about pump stations, we've got the levee system, and if the river's up and it rains behind the levee, we've got to get the water out still. So these pump stations pump the water over the flood protection system, so that way if it rained behind the levee. When we got into the pump station designs, we found that the water was having trouble getting here. So this is a neighborhood south of the Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. There was flood history here, and so we actually took some property that I guess really wasn't being used. It was part of it was next to Cohen Park. You remember where the fountain that's continuous has been there for a long time, and so we put in a stormwater basin, and then we got together with our parks team. Doing an awesome job with putting a little sidewalk path around it, and now I've done park improvements along there. So it's definitely, not only is that area much safer from a flood mitigation standpoint, but we've got kind of a really cool amenity there planned by our parks team. So. We've also done things like levee raises, and so the bottom graphic kind of shows what that is. And so we've elevated our levees and flood walls to have a buffer or freeboard above what is considered that special flood hazard event. And typically it's 3 to 4 feet. We actually even put a little bit more buffer in that, adding another 6 inches, or even using the core standard, which is the 90% probabilistic event. And so it's kind of a modeling accuracy thing that they use to set the height. And so we've not only raised our levees, so you can see on the left there, that's a levee south of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. We've replaced some of the levees due to condition, that's by you can see the red bridge, Principal River Rock Red Bridge there. And then we've also just raised some of the walls there. We've actually put a cap on the wall to build some of that freeboard. So this is not only to provide flood mitigation and reduce flood risk, we are also doing this from FEMA standard as well. If we did not do some of these improvements, there was a risk that FEMA would say, we don't recognize the flood protection system. It doesn't meet our standards. So we're gonna change the classification of the area behind it, and considering it maybe a special flood hazard area. So not only is this drastically reducing flood mitigation risk, doing flood mitigation, it's also reaching the FEMA standards, and actually even with some buffer above that. So is why we're doing this. There's some other improvements here. We talked about gate wells. These are the structures that our public works team closes when there's a high flood event, so that way the river doesn't back up through our storm sewer system. We've also done some stabilization work. You can see that's on the Iowa Women of Achievement Bridge to armor the banks. So we not only armor the levee system and flood protection system on the front side because our river can cause scouring. We've also done improvements on the back side. So there's groundwater that flows underneath the levees, and that poses a risk for undermining the levees. So we've done some stabilization improvements and also done seepage drains to pull that pressure out from under there. So again, not just raising the levees, but making them more robust. And then our closures, those are generally where if you want to call the most at-risk points in our flood protection system. This is our public works team now operating our new closures. The one on the left is the Simon Estes Amphitheater right out our window here. And then the one on the right, for folks watching, if you go to an Iowa Cubs game, those walls are closures. And so you can see that's much quicker to install as opposed to what we used to have to do was have contractors bring in loads of earth material to close up these areas. And of course, then that poses a risk from the time standpoint and stability standpoint. So we're hardening these closures. Very proud that a city that our flag is modeled off of bridges, that our bridges are in great condition. And just kind of a statistic there, we've replaced, rehabilitated 21 bridges in the past 10 years. We've got 52 of them. In 2013, we had 14 that were classified as structurally deficient, and I do want to point out that doesn't mean they're not safe. That just means elements of the bridge are in poor condition, and so again, I don't want to say that's unsafe, but that's just a metric that structural engineers used from classifying bridges. And in 2024, we're down to 2, and one of them is Walnut, so I guess that one's gone. So that maybe it should be 1 right now. And so the other one is the Raccoon River Bridge, which we have in the CIP. I should have probably. I don't change the numbers until we've actually replaced it and finished the project. So I guess in hindsight I shouldn't. But so here's just a snapshot. I mentioned that all those bridges we've worked on, and here's just in the past 5 years, right? Grand Avenue, Court Avenue, Southwest First, Locust, Scott, Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway, University, Southeast 6th, East 30th, over by the fairgrounds, Southwest 9th, all done in the past 5 years. And then we've got a lot that's real recent, 2nd Avenue, 2 bridges there, Southwest 8th Viaduct in 2023, and then Southwest 9th is coming. And Guthrie Avenue is planned for 2025. Walnut's under construction. And then we got Fleur Drive, as I mentioned before, in our capital improvement program as well. Sidewalks, this was the start of it, right? We moved DSM, kind of laid out what we consider priority 1 sidewalks, those that are on recommended school routes, connecting to bus stops, commercial nodes, long connections. And so this was a map and moved DSM. The red are what we call priority 1 gaps. You can see some parts of our city obviously have more than others. So we put together a plan to attack those, and so kind of created a phasing effect of those. And so I think this was this is kind of the overarching CIP, but I gave this slide a few weeks ago, and so we've made quite a bit of progress, over 27 miles in the past 5 years. And what's underway, under contract, or in the works, getting ready to bid, we're looking to be at 31 miles with fiscal year 2025. So.
Put that in perspective. So if we keep on that pace, how long is it going to take us to get through the priority 1 sidewalks?
Well, that would average about 5.5 miles a year. So we had, 180 miles? So 5.5 to... Yeah, that's a be.
Yeah.
So 32 years, 33 years. Yep. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about streets. This was Hubble Avenue in 2017. You can see it was kind of some obscure intersections. Unfortunately, at the time, it was I think ranked number 4 in the state from a crash history standpoint on the state's list. And so you can see there was obscure intersections. You can see kind of I don't have a mouse, but at the top right of the screen, if you're on East 38th or East Douglas, you can kind of go to this weird intersection where you're turning at an angle, or you can go up to East 38th to the north. Euclid also came in at a unique intersection. And then I tell you, one of the challenges, to be honest with you, was the access management. If you were at a gas pump and at the Quick Trip, you could just leave your pump and go straight out and make a left-hand turn on there, which people did. It was not even a comfortable intersection to drive. Full disclosure, I live over in this area on Hull Avenue. So this is the configuration today. So you can see kind of a flash back and forth there. Did some reconfiguration of the intersections. Okay. And so you can see the access control, right? So now the Quick Trip, you do have to go over to a side road there, the new East Douglas, to a traffic signal, and so you cannot make the left-hand turn directly out of there. The intersections are more aligned, so they're kind of more clear to folks using them. And then the better part is the data. So when we collect the data before and after, we've seen a 50% reduction in the total number of crashes, 60% reduction in total injuries, and 75% reduction in fatal severe injury crashes as a total. So I'd say that's a pretty successful project, and if you drive through the area, I think people definitely like it a lot better. I think even the Quick Trip folks like it a lot better, so to say the least. Okay. So just kind of an update on some of our larger corridor projects. Ingersoll Avenue, phases 1 through 3 are done. Phase 4, I'll show some graphics on a little bit here, but that's well underway and scheduled to be completed in the spring of 2025. Phase 5 from 31st to 35th, that is scheduled for 26-27, and then the final phase 6, would be 28-29 to all line up with the TIF funding, the tax increment financing funding that's set up to fund this. And so just below shows kind of some speed characteristics there. And I know the impetus for this is a lot of things, right? It's one, we've got dated infrastructure. The road itself was in poor condition. The pieces that aren't done, it is in poor condition. It's failing, and so we need to completely replace the infrastructure from the dirt up. Since we're doing that, we're also replacing a lot of the utility work underneath there. We have been finding lead services, so we have been replacing those lead service pipes to the businesses as we find them. We've been upgrading stormwater infrastructure, and so the parking areas, you see how they're a different shade. Those are brick pavers. The water is designed so the water goes through the seams of the brick pavers and promotes groundwater infiltration and reduces that stormwater runoff. I used to live over this area as well, and I do remember when it rains, the water definitely runs in a very sheet flow manner down the streets, I guess if I can word it that way. So we want to try and reduce that runoff as well, in addition to making this corridor safer for those that live and work and walk and play here. So just kind of give you another example. This was 2020 of Ingersoll Avenue between 24th and 28th Street. So you can see the street width there. So here's today, right? And so, I mean, again, you think about where's an area that's safer for all users, where's an area that you want to be. This in my opinion, definitely makes it a lot safer for especially for pedestrians and folks in this area. And then we get the questions. I just want to show up when you think about design concepts, because it's a question that comes up a lot. Why are there these curb extensions and bump outs? Why is there not a parking space right next to the driveway? It's not only just for pedestrians and bicyclists and transit users, it's for the motorists as well to see as they're exiting the driveway as well. So, here's the current stat. Here's kind of the current state. They've been working on the east side. They had really completed work on the east side between 28th and 29th. So you can see there's the granular base for the pavers on the right. And so that's kind of more of a clean stone. So the water actually provides storage for the water. And then if you go out there today, this is kind of what it looks like. So they pretty much got the east side done from 28th to 29th. They flipped over and they're working on the west side from 28th to 29th. And then they're also working from 29th to 31st on the east side. So again, this work is well underway. I think it will be completed, in my opinion, ahead of the spring, the May 2025 completion date, but that's the ultimate completion date. So, or for that phase. University Avenue is another corridor that started back in 2018, 2019. We had public meetings really regarding the section of 48th to 63rd. Really the area in front of Windsor Elementary was the focus. And residents, of course, came to those public meetings and said, well, what about the rest of the corridor? Then at the same time, Drake University had a streetscape planned from 25th to 31st. We had our sewer separation project planned in that same area. So that's why you folks saw 48th to 63rd done. That was what was in the CIP and also related to Windsor Elementary. And then 25th to 31st was related to the Drake streetscape project and the sewer separation. So right now, we're working on filling that middle gap between 31st and 48th. And this picture was taken. We can see the library in the background there for a reference point. So you can see it's a 3-lane cross section there. It used to be a 4-lane undivided roadway. In Enola Avenue, this was a picture taken a graphic taken from Google Street View a couple years ago. And so if we go to the same location, right there's what it is today. I took that photo last week. So again, a lot of development in this area, and so it was a rural county type roadway. And so we've added sidewalks, a shared use trail on the west side, added some pedestrian crossings between the neighborhoods. There's like I said, a lot of development in this area. So good to have that project, that 1 mile project tackled there. Another very similar situation in McKinley Avenue, right? We've got a roadway with no curbs, not much drainage, no sidewalks or little sidewalks, sidewalk gaps, and a road that's not in great condition. So we've started. We're working right now between Southwest 9th and South Union. Again, complete reconstruction to replace the roadway at a full depth rate, putting in curbs and gutters, sidewalks, storm sewers as well. And so the phase that's ongoing right now, spring of 23 to summer 2025, is under construction, and then the next phase will be spring of 25, starting with water main work utility work, and then that goes through summer of 27. That's from Southwest 9th to Southwest 14th. So if we look, here's when you go out there roughly, well, that was actually probably Wednesday or Tuesday. And so what it looks like between South Union and Southwest 9th, so you can see the paving is done, or the main line paving is put in there to up the hill from essentially from Southwest 8th up the hill. And then this is the section that's scheduled for next. So you're looking at water main installation, utility relocations in the spring in 2025, and then the storm sewer and pavement reconstruction in 26 and 27. Fleur Drive, it's been under construction a while. It's a large project. It's full reconstruction. Since we're doing full reconstruction, the team at Des Moines Waterworks said we want to also replace the water mains. We also wanted to upgrade the storm sewer infrastructure. We decided, well, then we're also going to upgrade the fill sidewalk gaps. You can see this one here, and this was a picture down kind of in the area of McKinley, right in front of Hy-Vee, and then also we're going to add irrigation and soil in the medians as well, so that way the water trucks aren't blocking the lanes when they're to water the plantings and the medians. And so phase 1 started in 2019. That was the northbound lanes of about a 1.5 mile section from Watrous to George Flagg. Phase 2, we flipped it over into the southbound lanes. Phase 3, which is this, which you see the picture of, is finishing up here, and so that one is scheduled to finish this year. So again, about a total of 1.5 miles of reconstruction there. We are going to resurface Fleur Drive from McKinley down to Army Post later this summer. So there will be work that's going to continue through the fall, into the fall of this year for Fleur Drive. So. But that is the last of the scheduled full reconstruction work. So
Maybe we could have a party after this is all done, the people that live along there.
Steve, can you give us an idea on funding sources on some of these projects? How often are federal dollars involved?
Good question. Yep. For Ingersoll, for example, is largely funded with tax increment financing. So that's from the increment that's from development on the Ingersoll corridor. That money has to stay in that urban renewal area. Fleur, I believe, is actually general funds, GO bonds, to fund that project, as well as McKinley. University Avenue has some safety money from the state in it. To help fund that because of the 4-lane to 3-lane and some of the pedestrian safety improvements in there as well. I'm trying to remember if I missed.
McKinley had MPO funds.
MPO funds, and we do have future MPO funds for some other corridors.
Which is federal funds.
Yep, that flow through the MPO. We also use local option sales tax, but that's oftentimes some of the smaller neighborhood type street projects, which makes sense.
So basically, all these amenities, we still have the greatest shares out of our own general fund and mechanisms of the city.
Correct. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
mass. Yeah, most of it is still city generated.
Yeah, so Second Avenue, I think there's Second Avenue, actually, that one has safety money because we're doing some of the realignment of a couple of the intersections as well as moving the sidewalks back. So that did get some safety money and adding turn lanes from the state. And that one also is funded from tax increment financing for that Central Place Business District as well there.
I almost forgot road use tax is a big piece of that as well. So there's probably 6 or 7 different sources.
Mm-hmm.
So you go back one slide, the Fleur Drive, McKinley to Army Post. Is that just 2 inches of overlay? Do you take up the other? Do you take up, the stuff that's below it? And, I mean, where are we at with this?
So that's a good question. So that project, it's not complete reconstruction. It's not the same as the others, but we are we're gonna repair some of the failed sections of the curbs along the stretch of the roadway. And then we also will do base patching and repair isolated sections of failed areas along there, and then mill 2 inches and put 2 inches back. So there will be base repairs, but in spot locations. So.
That's McKinley, or that's?
Sorry, that's
McKinley
the
to
Fluor
Army
Drive from McKinley to Army Post.
And I've asked you this question, and I've had this question asked. So McKinley, we're doing concrete. Fluor Drive, we did blacktop.
Yep.
So I know, South Union, Southeast Fifth, we did blacktop, but now we're doing concrete on McKinley. Can you just kind of, for the folks at home and for all of us, kind of educate us a little bit on why we do one and then we turn around a year later and do another one?
Yep, absolutely. Great question. So and Second Avenue is full up asphalt as well. And so there's a number of factors that go into it. Indianola was concrete. Some of it is one, we can design full depth, what we call perpetual pavements. Perpetual pavements are roads that, like, we're not going to have to reconstruct Fluor Drive in my lifetime again. And so that's not to say it won't need maintenance. We may need to mill 2 inches, put 2 inches back in so many years, or a concrete street will still need some joints that need patching and repairs in those times. And so again, all roads will need maintenance, but when we build a perpetual pavement that's building it with a base, with under drains, you'll see us putting like pipes along the sides of the road to drain the water out from under the road. We can build perpetual pavements with both asphalt and concrete. Why we choose one or the other, the asphalt from an access standpoint allows much quicker access. So Fluor Drive, Second Avenue, we've got so many businesses along there. That was one of the main reasons for choosing asphalt there. South Union, Southeast Fifth, sometimes that one was really more related to the paving equipment. The contractors and their pavers need so much space on beyond the string lines to actually pave the road. So McKinley Avenue, for example, we had the utility poles and everything moved back, and so we had all this space to put in concrete there. South Union and Southeast Fifth, there's like retaining walls along that whole corridor, so it was, to be honest, more of a room issue there. And then also it's a factor of even also looking at the bidding climate of where the workload is and where the market is. Quite honestly, one example, Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway, we actually did a bid alternate where we allowed both the concrete. So originally the bids came in much higher. We worked with the WRA and rebid it with a bid alternate to allow the asphalt folks to bid as well as the concrete, and then that drove the prices down, it's $1 million in that project to put the competition in. So some of it's also balancing that as well, but really it kind of boils down to access, and then is there room for the concrete paving equipment from our concrete industry.
But neither one of them lasts longer than the other. I mean, is there
not really if you design it properly. Yeah. I mean, asphalt is considered a flexible pavement, but the downsides of a lot of asphalt, really, especially is oxidation, the sun, and so if you notice, asphalt will start off, it's black, and then it kind of fades. Well, oxidation is the sun that takes the maltines out of the asphalt, and so it's kind of taking that oil out of the asphalt, and so you start to see it fade more. However, our public works team has been after combating that, so you may have seen them doing things like slurry seals or CAM, coarse aggregate materials, where they actually spray an oil material that injects the maltines into it. We actually did this on a section of Fluor Drive. We've done it on a number of other streets throughout the city to combat the oxidation. Concrete, the challenges are the joints, and so we've had challenges with joints. We've done things like sealing the joints to try and combat that, but they kind of all have their issues or challenges with maintenance. But again, I'm proud of what Jonathan and his team does to try and maintain those from dealing with that. So if you ever see folks, and you all probably get a lot of calls of, like, if you ever see folks like, well, they just put like a coat on their street. Well, that's what it is. It's not, is they're putting in a maintenance, a slurry seal, coating to basically protect the asphalt from oxidation. So. Here's the photograph of 2nd Avenue taken last week. So again, we've a lot of progress made there. Again, since we're reconstructing the road, Des Moines Waterworks wanted to get in and do the water main replacement. We also had a large sewer that was related to sewer separation efforts on one side of the road. They've done the sewer on the east side, but the big sewer is on the west side. And so this is them working along the east side of the road there, doing water service connections, water main work. So they're kind of working on the north half of this project. Again, this is the completion date is fall of 26 on this one. What's on the horizon? Well, I think you heard a lot of the news, Southeast Connector, right? We got the $34 million in federal discretionary grant funding there. US 69 corridor, we're working on the design with the DOT on the first project of that at Southeast 14th and Maury. Again, unfortunately, one of those intersections that was highly ranked in the state from a crash history, and we're going to do a similar concept to what was done as Hubble, realigning the intersections there. East Army Post Road Corridor, again, that's another one. The question about money, some of you have been involved in the MPO chair there. We've been piling up MPO federal funds for East Army Post Road. Again, a corridor that's experiencing a lot of development. It's a rural roadway with no sidewalk facilities, no curbs, and so this would reconstruct that road. Douglas Avenue corridor, which has been in the works to improve that corridor. Southwest 9th, there is the traffic study that's underway. That's scheduled to be completed later this year. And then Easton Boulevard is one that's not fully funded, but the county has really shown a lot of desire to improve that road from 4 Mile to East 56, and they have design concepts they've started developing. So I just want to give you a snapshot of some of those corridors to watch, if you will, for large corridors that are coming.
We're already doing Emma to Leach on Southwest 9, which is part of that stretch that the traffic.
And that's more to mill and resurface that roadway. It just can't wait for the money to,
Most of it can't wait. But
Yeah,
I
that's
appreciate
correct.
you
Yep.
doing at least that section.
Yep. So here's kind of the summary of what's been going on. I mentioned 2015. There's been a lot of infrastructure, to say the least, right? Over $500 million across 279 projects in the past 5 years alone, averaging 100 years. And so that's kind of, again, the numbers, I think speak for themselves. Our city has been making an incredible investment in infrastructure, to say the least. And so that's why I was, again, very proud and excited to share just kind of some of the highlights of this. With that, I've talked at you all a lot. So, yeah.
We've essentially made a record amount of infrastructure investment.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be able to keep that level up in perpetuity. It's going to drop back down to more normal levels in the coming years.
Well, maybe not normal, but I'll let the city manager.
Yeah.
I mean, there still is funding that we've
tax.
got into to help with it. But
There'll be a new norm. It will not go back to the 40 million on the first couple of years there, because this is from all sources, and we'll be looking at a capital improvement plan that alone the bonds is around 40 million a year, and then we have the sales tax, the road use, and the other sources, federal grants that stack on top of that. So I would tell you that the new norm is going to be almost exactly in the middle of what you see here. Over 60 million and probably a little under 80 on an annual basis.
So significantly higher than where we were in the early 2010s.
Correct.
But not the record amount that we've seen the last 5 years.
And again, a large portion of that goes back to the referendum on the sales tax and how critical that is, because it's not only funding that, but it's maintain our tax rate at the same rate that you after you had lowered it upon passage. So it's been a pretty incredible tool to have.
But a lot of the critical, sorry, I was going to say, a lot of the critical work is gotten done. Major roadways, storm sewer, a lot of major, not that we don't have a lot more, we still have a lot more to do, but we've taken care of a lot of major areas. So go ahead, Linda.
I've said this before, and I just want to say, Steve, you and your whole department, they do a fantastic job. You come to neighborhood meetings, I see the interaction, I see how sometimes neighborhoods are a little tough on you, and you do such a great job. And I mean, every time somebody calls, I call, you always, your departments just are doing a great job, so thank you.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Pullman?
Speaking of neighborhoods being tough on you, I have been too, and I very much value what Linda says. I would say a high percentage, 80-90% of the complaints we get, used to start with, I just can't believe there's no communication on this. And I think that's something that you've made sure happens well. I think our communications team supports you, and I think that's working really well, and I feel good about it. I do want to go back to earlier in your presentation when we were talking about, the 3-year average, and I know that's just, an average. But I do think that we've taken time this morning. It's worth us looking at policies or procedures that might speed that up some. I mean, for our residents, 2 years and 8 months would mean a lot, to get their street back 4 months early or whatever it is. And I know there's pressure points, and I like, our bidding process. We've overloaded the legal team, with all kinds of duties. Are there pressure points in the system where, because of any council policy or lack of direction, we could speed things up a little bit? Maybe things we don't even know, you're doing because we once told you to.
I think that's something we need to look at.
Yeah.
I
We
think,
can absolutely do that.
just even when you saw the boards and commissions, how do we get them to do it all at once or so?
Yeah.
Little things that, again, to your point, 3 months, 4 months means a lot to anybody that's had their street torn up. And you have, so I think whatever we can do. So if there are things that, like you said, we might not even know what all the different pressure points are that we could try to streamline. So we'll go to the manager and Steve and his team to come through and make recommendations.
We can do that, but as a city manager, I need to set a realistic expectation here that oftentimes when you think about a resurfacing project, it will turn into 5 or 6 other utility issues or easement issues that need to be resolved. So there's also with the boards and commissions that do touch the process, that we would need to bring recommendations to you that those boards and commissions will feel like they still should have some input. So for us, it's about finding opportunities to work those processes in parallel to shorten some of the time. But I think it may end up needing to be maybe additional communications that there's additional work being done that was not originally thought needed, but discovered upon the early stages of the process. So we can absolutely do that. But again, I would tell you that from an expectation, we might be talking about a few months.
Yeah.
Like you said, 2 years, 8 months might be something more realistic.
And that's extremely well said. And I actually have a presentation I've done in the past on why projects take so long. And that an example is Fleur Drive. If we were to just mill down the pavement to a whatever depth and pave it back, that would be a fast project. But since we're reconstructing it, now Des Moines Waterworks wants to replace the main, and they should. It had a lot of breaks. There was a huge wave of water main breaks shortly before that project started, flooding out the roadway. Then and it's also, we want to put the sidewalks in. We want to replace some of the storm sewers. Let's add, to upgrade that. Let's add the irrigation. So you can see how a project expands, and then suddenly that's what I'm talking. There are projects we do very fast. I mean, if we are just doing resurfacings, milling resurfacings, or reconstructing just the pavement, those can be only a year. We can do those next year, type things. We do need to also keep in mind the queue of other projects, right? We have a whole CIP of other stuff. So if something wants to pop up, what does it replace and bump in line as well? So.
Well, I was just hoping the coordination piece.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important part of this process. And one of the other complaints that I hear, I think our residents get frustrated when we redo a road and then the next year Des Moines Waterworks is in there tearing up that same stretch because there wasn't the coordination.
Yeah.
And that piece, I think, is really important to make sure that we are as efficient as possible. And even if that piece takes a little bit longer, because we're coordinating, we save
Sure.
another project that's going to be disruptive for another year in 2 or 3 years. And we save our residents and taxpayers a bunch of money. I mean, that coordination piece and continuing to do more to coordinate so we're in the roadway once is really important.
And that's really a communication too.
Steve, have we ever looked at, with some of these major road constructions, similar to what the DOT does, where they'll work, the contractor maybe 2 shifts, where they'll work, into the evening and they'll have lights set up. So, a Fluor Drive doesn't take maybe 6 years, maybe it takes 3 years. Have we ever considered doing that? I know Second Avenue, we're going to be doing the same thing. And I mean, I guess cost obviously would have something to do with that, but I mean, it's became, you realize, somewhat of a joke of how long we've been working on Fluor Drive, and I get it. But I mean, the road's closed already. Why wouldn't we continuously? It's not in the middle of a neighborhood. It's I mean, why wouldn't we allow them to work, an extra shift, or try to speed up the process? Has that ever? I mean, as long as I've been on the council, I've never seen that happen. But I see the DOT doing it.
Yeah, I think, to answer your question, we haven't explored the 24-hour or night work. We have done on major corridors, we call incentive type work. So what we've done is we've calculated out what the costs are to the city, and it amounts to quite a bit. From the longer a project takes, right? We have staff, or we have consultants, or we have people involved, then the more it costs us as well. So we've calculated out an incentive to try and use that incentive to pay them essentially the overtime costs to expedite projects. And so in other words, we'd say, well, the normal completion date would be 3 years. We'll offer an incentive to get it done in 2, and say the incentive is $250,000 or whatever it is. And that sounds like a lot of money, but that's what it would actually cost the city for the extra year to help. And that $250,000 pays for the overtime. I think all but one project that we've done this on has hit the incentive to get done.
How about what it's cost the businesses that we've disrupted throughout the entire process? I mean, I don't think we take that in consideration. Now, I know a McKinley project, you couldn't do that, but a Second Avenue or a Fluor Drive, I mean, it's worth considering and weighing the cost as a council to look at it and be able to maybe speed the process up a little bit. And the only way to do that is to have people working consistently on it.
Yeah, the 24/7.
And you would be able to maybe get it done in one construction cycle and not a 2-year period, or a 6-year could be a 3-year where we did the whole stretch. I'd like to see, what the cost is of something like that on some of these major road constructions and see what they would come back at. And because you're right, your staff time is taken up. The businesses are disruptive. I mean, there's a lot there, and if we could speed it up and have them work consistently through it. I mean, the road's closed; it doesn't matter. I mean, it's know, we're one lane both ways. I'd like to see that.
Yeah. And the quarters you mentioned in Fuller's, we actually do have incentives on Fleur Drive, Ingersoll, and Second Avenue because of the business aspect. So you're right, we can't really calculate it, but the incentives are in place. The Ingersoll example for last year actually did finish, 7 months ahead of
But you
schedule.
can't cut it in half like you could if you had
Right.
two different shifts working.
Right.
The same, when you had, I mean, if you're working 16 hours a day on a project, 2 8-hour shifts, you can get moving.
Was it because there's so much other stuff going on, whereas the interstate, you've got the storm sewer, you got this, I mean, I don't know if that complicates it, but I think it'd be worth looking at.
Yeah, yeah. And the balance, like you said, I mean, you mentioned it, it'd be on corridors where there isn't residents,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I get that.
The DOT did, I think, try some of that on Second Avenue north of Euclid, and there was some feedback from the residents that were upset about the night work.
Well, I
They
mean,
had the
it's
lights
a residential. I mean,
on. I know. Yeah.
when you go north of Euclid, it's complete all houses.
I know, yeah. But they were doing the whole corridor all the way up to the interstate.
I understand that.
Yeah.
That's not.
Yeah, I know. Yep.
That's not Fleur Drive,
Right.
and that's not the Second Avenue, the portion we're doing right now. There's
Right.
not any. I don't think there's any homes on there.
Right. Yep.
Connie?
Yes.
One more subject I wanted to bring up, and this might be more for Scott, organizational wide, is as the council makes decisions on projects, the capital cost of what Steve's team does to deliver it, and then the ongoing maintenance and I'm not just talking about maintenance of the street, but of snow, of the expectations that we have for all that. And I'll tell you, I'll give you one example. Like we had a flashpoint this winter when we were removing snow on Ingersoll, when we got all that snow in a week. Well, we are also building wider trails around the city. We have a big project on Douglas that you referenced that would include a 3-mile wide trail. And I think when we do these things, the council ought to have some expectation of what the 5 or 10-year cost is to maintain these structures, because we can't not do that unless our expectations for them changed. But like my understanding is the trail on Douglas would be, city maintained. We'd shovel it.
Yeah.
There's not,
We have one on McKinley now.
And
Yeah.
I think Parks and Trails is responsible for that, but I don't see us adding more money into the Parks and
Yeah.
Rec budget to cover the maintenance of those trails,
I,
because I know we've gotten into trouble with that.
like you said the point better than I wanted to, because I just think there is expenses that we bite off for the projects that we do that are beyond just the maintenance that your team in Public Works does of, and I think we ought to begin to build those into the recommendations that you and your team are making in council communications.
Yeah, we can absolutely. do
And
that.
the amount of time that it increases on the project, because I know, just like McKinley, where, okay, now a portion of the street is completed, but 2 months from now, we're not able to open up that portion because we got to come back and pour the 10-foot trail on that side of the road. And you and I have talked about that. So there's no, okay, the road's done right here, but now this portion of it isn't done. And so it does add a lot more time, a lot more maintenance, as Councilman Coleman had. So that would be something that I think that we need to know as a council what we're actually adding and ongoing
Chris, what I
costs.
hear you saying is when a capital project is priced out, we also need to include the increase in operating
Operation,
costs.
right.
That's a great way of
So
saying it.
we have a way to compare it. If the sidewalk or the trail didn't exist, it's an increase. If it's wider, it's an increase.
Yeah, and that would include like signals, signage, striping, painting,
Well,
all of those aspects.
Yeah.
and we should make sure to be comprehensive. And I don't know what the answer is, but when we have a 4-lane street that goes to a 3-lane street, there's different maintenance there. So and it might, I mean, I don't have any expectation of where it lands in terms of if you go to a 3-lane street and add a path on the side, how does that compare? But there's some savings. Some pieces are going to cost less, other pieces are going to cost more. It's important that, I mean, the transparency piece is important to understand, but we need to make sure we get all sides of the cost drivers.
I think that's it. I think that's a fair statement. Like my isolated example of Douglas or of your McKinley is that across the street we could be citing people for not shoveling their sidewalk, and if we don't maintain whatever expectations or policy we have, we're in violation of our own. So there is like this high expectation that we manage it, because we do cite people and fine them for not maintaining it. And I think so when we do these projects, it's not like, oh, we'll decide to maintain it at a higher or lower level. We're
We have to
biting
maintain
it
it.
off unless we changed the expectations and policy. And I would rather see that happen before we go through this 5-year building plan where we're significantly increasing the everyday cost of the city.
But that should be factored into the budget then.
And Indianola has the multi-use trail now, too, from Army Post to 65, 69. So we're going to maintain all of that,
Yep.
correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's, we're adding lots of those in there. To see, does Parks maintain all of those trails then, or how's that work?
Combination, yeah. Public Works and Parks, but a lot of it is some of it's having to be contracted out, so. Yeah.
So we are paying contractors. I know we do it in Ingersoll, but for other ones,
Yeah, correct.
I
Yeah.
had an example of some, and we had put in the bike trail, and it's supposed to come out of the Parks and Recreation budget, but they'd used up all their money for the trails. So I was told Public Works was helping with it. And
Yeah, yep, that's correct. It's been a combination of Public Works and Parks to tackle, there has been a lot of facilities added, and so it's been a combination of effort
but we need
to.
to put that in the budget, in Parks and Rec budget.
Or wherever it fits.
Well,
And we
and
have increased the
we
trail
we
budget.
do we do need to have that upfront cost of when we're doing these roads. So that is a really good point that we have never ever looked at. That we're building these and we're putting them in there, and then we're maintaining them, and we have no idea the increase in the budget that we're doing with these. So it'd just be nice to know that.
Okay. Well, great conversation this morning, man.
Okay. Well, thank you, Steve, and thank your team for everything you do. And it just shows how complicated things are. And we've made great strides, and we still have a lot of work to do, which I guess great opportunity.
Yep. And thank you all, Mayor and Council. I know this is, I'm with you a lot in field meetings with residents and at neighborhood meetings with residents. And, again, like I said, it's kind of like when I reflect back and people, what are you going to do about the streets? What are you going to do about the streets? What are you going to do about sidewalks, bike trails, pedestrian facilities? What are you going to do about stormwater? And then now we have this huge wave of construction going on. And so we have, obviously that brings frustrations in itself. And so all this construction is tough to deal with. And so I appreciate all your leadership and tackling this as a resident as well as a city team member. So it's a lot to say the least. So thank you.
With that, we will end this work session, and our regular meeting will start at 4:55, I believe, with a resolution, so proclamation. So we will see everybody back here this afternoon. Thank you.